of owning a cafe and other heroic deeds by Beware the Tristavo, Chapter 110, Saturday, Part 14. The match between Rappa and Todoroki was intense.
Aizawa-san, we may need you and your quirk to intervene. Would you come with me, please?
Each bout was placed on a 10-minute time limit, and now at 8:10, both men were bloody.
You believe that Rappa is using his quirk.
And neither were showing any signs of letting up. The referee couldn't intercede either, for both men were following the rules.
We can't prove it conclusively. It's registered as strong arm, and from what the database confirms, he can only use it in a burst of 10 seconds at a time, so under our guidelines, it's not something we could actively disqualify, since it only allows a greater range of movement, and we can't be certain he's employing it either, since there are no visible tells.
Frowning lightly, he followed the senior official quietly, his eyes flickering to the combatants carefully.
I see. So you want me to step in if necessary, should either of them go too far or fail to stop when the klaxon sounds. That would be ideal. Thank you.
The aged man murmured as the spectators and competitors gasped, oohed, and ahed at the spectacle. Shit! The pair were leading each other all over the place within the boundary. At this rate, one or both of them would end up seriously hurt, and although we didn't particularly care about Angie's health, well, the dickhead wouldn't be heading to hospital instead of Tartarus today, not on his watch.
I'm at your disposal, Shisha,
he stated firmly as he stood shoulder to shoulder with the officiate who, using a power similar to Chizome's, would end the match if necessary. Shit, he'd not realized it when Rampakendo had been talking to him either, but the youth was dangerous not only to others but himself. Yeah! He was becoming consumed by bloodlust, and with each of the fighters being as pig-headed as the other, it was only a matter of time before one of them snapped, "That's it!" And they went too far.
It's over, brat.
Narrowing his gaze a touch, Shouta kept his eyes trained on Todoroki. Oi! There was a flicker of flame ghosting through his hair. God, it turned his stomach to think that Dabi, the strong, wonderful young man who he couldn't love any more if he tried, had inherited that trait from his biological father.
Shisho,
he murmured, his head inclining at the object of his ire.
He's about to
fucking cheater! Bastard! Settle down, he stated firmly, whilst his elder already on the move, he erased the wispy, almost invisible flames ghosting around a startled, wild-eyed endeavor, and Tanaka dropped Rappa with a touch, the other's form flopping to the ground and away from the jet of superheated air that Enji had been aiming right at the young man's head. How disgusting, how unbecoming of a pro-hero. Not that he'd be one for long.
Todoroki, you are disqualified,
he told him, his tongue clipped and hair waving ominously, whilst the enraged man went from staring disbelievingly at his hands to glaring angrily at him.
Remove yourself from the ring, quietly, before you disgrace yourself further. You!
The other cut in viciously, his form prowling towards him, his fists clenched.
You've taken my... Wait, no. No! So it was you, a little pathetic nobody from nowhere, who was there that day.
He hissed venomously, whilst he raised a hand in a deliberate gesture to stop anyone from intervening. If the son of a bitch wanted a piece of him, then he'd happily oblige. The fucker had been disqualified. Tournament rules didn't apply now. Any action he took would be in self-defense, and he'd have a room full of shocked witnesses to prove it, even if the police force weren't actively viewing and recording what was happening.
I'm not sure what you're talking about,
he said calmly, his red irises zeroed on him.
But this is your last warning. Either stand down or I'll make you,
he added, just to rub more salt in the other's wounded ego.
This isn't how someone of your profession should behave now, is it?
He furthered quietly, a small shit-eating grin tugging his lips despite himself.
Such an attitude could potentially make your superiors think twice about including you in important missions, couldn't it?
Oh, that was definitely the Todoroki stink eye Rappa had been talking about. The guy looked like he was about to pop several veins.
How fucking dare you?
Gun! Taking a second to blink, he steeled himself, reactivated his quirk, and tilted his form in a familiar pose.
Oof!
Sure, he could have done something a little fancier. He could have made a spectacle of the whole thing, but The countdown special was his community's favorite move, and he didn't want to disappoint them. Then, to the wind thoroughly knocked out of the repulsive man, he wasted no time scrambling over the bastard's back, securing his arms and calling for the quirk suppressing cuffs.
You,
The older man whined, his form clearly on the brink of unconsciousness.
you'll pay for this. Maybe so,
He stated before leaning closer to his ear.
but you'll be paying first.
He whispered cruelly, his hands giving the wrists they'd caught a nasty twist.
I hope you remember this thing of this agony endeavor, and when you do, I want you to remember this as well.
He hissed.
The heartache and terror you've inflicted upon your family is going to be given back to you 10 times over.
He breathed, the other balking at his words, even as the police force were upon them.
And that kick you've just suffered wasn't for me. It was for Ray, for Toya, and those other 3 beautiful children you never deserved to have. Do you understand?
At his words, the older man froze, the single turquoise eye trained on him wavering.
What?
We'll take it from here, Aizawa sensei. Grunting, he only deactivated his quirk once Kenji-san had snapped the cuffs in place, and now he was no longer needed. He pulled himself off of the fallen, balking man and took a few steps back, his face dispassionate, whilst before the gawping crowd, the police force commander took center stage.
Todoroki and Jin! You are under arrest.
He declared, a surprised hush laying across the area like a heavy blanket.
Not only for the 2 counts of assault you've just tried to commit,
He furthered, his gruff voice ringing out, filling the room,
but for the following crimes. Crimes that we have strong evidence to show you have carried out over the last 18 years.
Oh, he shouldn't be enjoying the other's public shaming, but he really genuinely couldn't help it.
You are charged with spousal abuse, child endangerment, the physical, social, and emotional abuse of said children and spouse, coercive control.
Because this was what he'd been dreaming about. Sure, the slamming his leg into the fucker's crotch with all the force he could muster had felt good. However,
Blackmail, extortion, obstructing the lawful investigation into a child's death, preventing the course of justice, enslavement, sexual battery.
to watch the man's face as the carefully orchestrated world he built around himself crumbled, fell like so much ash from a funeral pyre.
The unlawful use of your quirk, hero license, and government-endorsed grants.
His beagle-headed friend stated, whilst the capture quirk officers circled it down to Todoroki, who'd paled, his body juddering in shock.
You have the right to remain silent, and you also have the right to have an attorney present at your trial.
And good luck trying to get any firm worth their salt to support you, especially since Ray and your children already have your favorites on their side, he thought as the man was hoisted up and dragged away, his bare feet padding after the officers and their cargo. Just in case. If the prick snapped and managed to ignite his quirk, then he'd be needed. In his periphery, he could see his lover, Keigo, Mirai, and Atsuhiro moving along the tiered seating until they reached the steps, all of them hurrying to be on hand at his side too.
This isn't happening. This is a mistake.
Watching dispassionately, Shouta folded his arms whilst walking out of the arena as the crimson-haired man's shock started to dissipate.
So you're refusing your first right then, Todoroki-san?
Now Masa asked, his tone blunt but polite, his truth quirk already in effect, whilst the 8 men holding and carrying the disgraced number 2 continued to move in towards the emergency exit, whose doors were being held open by 4 grave-looking officiates.
Silent? Silent? How can I stay silent when I'm being wrongfully arrested for crimes I haven't committed?
He roared, his hulking mass roiling.
I've been framed. This is slander. This is bullshit.
He continued to rant as they made their way outside.
I demand the right to call my agency. The Endeavor's offices have been closed until further notice, I'm afraid.
Kenji-san shrugged.
Furthermore, your assets, personal or otherwise, have been frozen. Your sidekicks are under caution, and my officers are currently searching through your properties for any other incriminating evidence,
he said. Somehow he managed to keep a straight face. It'd be inappropriate for him to laugh. It'd be childish and irrational besides.
What? That's not possible. Set me down this instant. Aizawa-san, if you would. Of course.
He replied blithely whilst activating his quirk. the warm, steady comfort of Toshinori's right hand upon the small of his back, putting him at ease, whilst Atsuhiro and Mirai walked next to him on the left as Keigo, the incorrigible man that he was, had perched on his left shoulder, his phone pointed at the scene. There wasn't anything the Todoroki could do about that, of course. The police force openly encouraged passers-by to film them at work and to hold them to account if necessary. It was one of the things Shouta loved most about Keiji-san and the way in which he'd reformed the service he now commanded.
This is outrageous,
the bro hero howled, his fidgeting intensifying when the armored reinforced police transport pulled up, alongside a plethora of interested civilians, all of them muttering, talking, and snapping photos or videos.
Good. I'll have your badge, all of your badges, and you, Aizawa, just you fucking wait.
He raged as, with grunts of effort, the 8 officers wrangled the fiend into the large double-door fronted backing of the truck-like vehicle, which was lined with water jets ready to spray the second the internal temperature rose by even 30 degrees. "There go!" Atsuhiro called cheerfully with a jolly wave as the brick was sewn into the padded area with numerous buckles, belts, and other flame-retardant materials. "Don't forget to write. The more threats you send, the more evidence we have," the winged pro furthered, a touch of bitterness lacing his joviality. His amber eyes narrowed. "You deceptible bastard!" He finished with a up, his smile darkening a touch, even as Toshinori patted at the feet balancing so easily upon the brawn of his shoulder. "They done it!" Enji was thoroughly subdued, the doors securing him and clanged shut. It was over, and other than the prick himself, no one had been hurt. The children were fine.
On your right, sweetheart.
Blinking, Shouta turned to look up at his lover before leaning into him, eyes closing, as Mirai placed a brotherly hand onto his shoulder, that golden gaze warm.
"I've just been told that the judge is only settling the crowds, but if you like, we could just go to your way now,"
he murmured knowingly.
"I have a sneaking suspicion there's a group of people who are just as anxious to see you as you are to see them, you know?"
Stuck on his back, humiliated, alone and already plotting several ways to destroy that Aizawa bastard, Todoroki Enji huffed, growled, and shimmied around in his bindings as the mutt officer and his cronies drove him, no doubt, to Tartarus. Shit! How had this happened? Why had this happened? Heads were going to literally roll when he... Blinking, his eyes shot up to the ceiling where the sound had emanated, a spark of hope flooding him as his flaming sidekicks had arrived. That fucking dog had been wrong, and...
What?
There was a screen directly above him. There was a countdown. Hello, Enji. No, it couldn't be.
Ray!
If you're seeing this, then a very carefully constructed mission to bring you to justice has been successful. His wife stated from where she was sat, presumably earlier in some kind of booth. She looked calm. She looked together, but how? Who found her? Why hadn't Osakawa's senior administrator contacted him? I can only imagine the look on your face, she stated further, her green-gray eyes steely, her shoulders straight and back, whilst she regarded the camera confidently, her hair tied back elegantly in a loose bun. She was wearing a pearl necklace, matching earrings, and a smart black blazer atop a pristine white shirt. But I won't have to imagine for too long, she continued, her brows lightly furrowed, while she took in a deep breath, released it, and stared into the lens. Stared right at him. By now, Commander Tsugarame will have told you about the charges we're bringing against you, and because you're the father of my children, I am going to offer you a deal, she furthered. When you arrive at Tartarus, my lawyer will be there waiting for you, she said. She will have signed and dated divorce papers alongside further documentation that you can sign to say that you'll give up any and all rights to see, be with, or interact with your children, she stated, her tone firm. It's in your best interest to agree to my terms, place your signature on those papers, and begin to think very carefully about what your atonement for the sins you've committed against us will look like, as I have done the same. And I will work my fingers to the bone for our children's forgiveness, Enji. I swear on my life to that. What? She couldn't have access to the children. She'd been seconded. She'd injured his prodigy. However, if you're going to be difficult,
If you're going to refuse to do what's right even now,
What? What could you do? She was only educated up to the high school standard. She had no money. She'd been disowned by her family.
then any leniency I could afford you will be gone, and I'll sue you. I'll sue you for every yen you have.
She shrugged.
And I'm not alone. Not anymore.
She said, a radiant smile pulling her lips.
I have a family who love me, who support me, and who are generous enough to having secured Ishizaki and Sons as the legal team for myself and my children.
No. No, that... She couldn't have. Old man Fushi had been his father's attorney. He would never betray me.
Fushizama and his associates were disgusted when they began to work on our case. He was so disgusted, in fact, that he drew up the divorce papers personally for me, free of charge.
She furthered that smile more serene.
Living with you, I'd known only darkness for such a long time, NG, that I'd forgotten what it was like to see the light, let alone live in it.
She breathed. This wasn't happening.
From what Sigarame-san has said, it'll take you a good long hour to get it out of us. That will be your home now. Your home for a very, very long time,
she stated, her eyes tearing slightly.
And I'm so glad about that,
she continued before gently wiping away the glistening moisture.
The next time I see you, you'll be standing trial.
No, 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 no!
Which is so much more than you deserve, really, but unlike you, my family and I, decided that you needed to be handled lawfully, that the world should know who you are, who you really are.
She sighed before, with a blink, that smile returned full force, and she slid to the right. She slid over to allow a scarred young man to sit beside her. Their hands upon the table had interlaced. Surely she'd not taken a lover so young. That boy couldn't have been older than... No, he gasped, his heart clenching, his body jolting. It can't be, he whispered. Todoroki Enji. Hello. So, my name is Aizawa Dabi, the other carried on, his head inclining politely, and I am greatly looking forward to seeing you in court, he murmured, a smirk that he recognized as his own spreading across those two-toned lips. So I can speak my truth against yours.